Hello, Team Peachtree. And I see there's an echo here. Uh, does that work? No, it doesn't. How do I sound? I think I've got it. How do I sound now? Is there any echo? Is that better? Can you guys hear me? Kristen, thanks very much. Good to see you as well. Terry, can you guys hear me now okay without the echo? Is that okay? No echo. Okay. Yeah, I've just so this is kind of a different setup, laptop, phone. Yeah, so that's where we are. Um, Welcome to the first Team Peachtree episode live from Manhattan. How's that? So I'm a little bit closer to your neck of the woods. Yeah, and I must say I love Bryant Park in Manhattan. It's just such an artistic thing seeing those asymmetric, even though it is somewhat symmetric, but far less symmetric arms of the trees silhouetted against the very symmetric, rigid, hard lines of the buildings. Kind of crazy about it. It's just so such a kind of dichotomy, kind of a contradiction. Um, in a way, the trees right now are dead, and the buildings look more alive than the trees. But it's actually the other way around. The trees are the life of. It's like a small Central Park, Bryant Park. Um, I really wish I could just bring the studio I have back home with me and just be able to be up and running the moment I get here. Maybe the next time I come here, I'll be a bit quicker off the mark, but you cannot believe the issues that I've had. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them, but I mean, even StreamYard, I'm trying to get StreamYard to say I'm going live in half an hour, and I don't know, I can't change the international date setting. You'd think it would be simple, but it just so far isn't. So anyway, there are very weird issues when you travel internationally with digital devices. I think they're purposefully designed to work in a certain way, in certain countries. That's why you have carriers, that as well. So anyway, Mondo says, I hope you get a gander at the Library Museum and all the famous manuscript collections. Yeah, I must say, I've seen a fair amount, but I've also been unexpectedly, what's the word, slowed down with really simple, stupid things, such as, if I can find it. I mean, when I was in South Africa, I I bought this plug. It's like a universal plug, right? And that should have been the simple solution to being plugged in here, and it simply didn't work. And then I bought another one. Where's the other one? Then I bought another one here. This one, quite a fancy one. This one didn't work either. Anyway, I can carry on complaining for a while, but that's not what the point of this is. But yeah, it was definitely been a mission to simply power up and yeah. But anyway, yeah, we are. I'm sure I'll get a little bit better organized as things go along. So please bear with me. Um, I would love to have just arrived and been able to um, continue what I was doing, but yeah, that was a bit of a fairy tale, I guess. Sometimes I think you've also got to allow things not to be perfect, or even close to perfect. So yeah. Um, okay, so I don't want to spend too much time jabbering away. We're going to deal with mid-July of the Van Gogh letters, and then we can talk a little bit after that. This isn't going to be a long one. It'll be about 1 hour instead of 2 or 3. So that's what I kind of want to deal with. I'm considering doing just a quick live update for the rocket science channel. This was supposed to be a bit of a test run, and I've sort of figured now that the speakers of the laptop have got to be off. So that should make that a little bit easier. Yvonne, good to see you here. Helena, good to see you guys. Yeah, you see, Stephanie, I'm only gonna be here for a while, and then I'm gonna have to set up somewhere else. But it's the StreamYard doesn't really seem to recognize a different time zone. You'd think that would be quite easy. Um, yeah, unless I'm missing something. I know the video that you're seeing now was initially scheduled for a different time, so maybe that was the problem. Okay, you guys ready to get started? Lisa Brick. Remember, I'm the scout leader here. I'm not TCRS. Okay. I must say the weather has been fantastic until mid-afternoon today. It was really glassy, clear, sunny, chilly, but sunny and bright. And then it started getting a bit gray towards this afternoon. I'm really surprised that the sky is so clear. I would have expected New York, such a big city, to be quite polluted. But I guess being so close to the coast, it it sort of cleans it up, right? Okay, I'm going to spend another minute or so just seeing what you guys are saying. I was very surprised to receive those lovely photos from New York. Okay. Um, Lisa and I are a little worried about some big winter storms going on in the south. Um, we we are going to meet up somewhere, and we're just a little bit worried whether that's going to interfere with train travel, plane travel. Sorry. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I don't want to be too transparent about exactly what I'm doing for now, but as I get a bit more comfortable with the trip, then I'll be a bit more open with where I am and what I'm doing. How am I adjusting to the time change? That's quite a good question. Um, it's hard to say. My sleep patterns were pretty chaotic to begin with, but the flying here, long haul, I can't really sleep on a plane, and because of the length of the flight, it got to a pretty critical level, which is like I have to sleep now. You know, it got to a pretty critical level, and then eventually I did sleep. But it's when it's in a situation where you had doing a layover, and then they delay the layover, and you're at that critical level of sleep where I suppose it's just a matter of, well, I'll just sleep and miss my flight, because I mean, it's you're a human being, you're not a machine, you have to sleep. So some travel things can be very tricky. Anyway, I want to make a special video of, like an edited video of the trip here. I know exactly what I want to do, so I'll tell you guys more about that with, you know, backup visuals and so on. I'll do that separately. I was at a point getting really worried that I was going to get sick because if you want to get sick, you just make sure you don't ever get enough sleep, especially like chronic low levels of sleep, and then you'll eventually get quite sick. So starting to get really worried that that was on the cards, but I have fortunately managed to get little chunks of good solid sleep. Bad news is my dog is apparently not adapting very well to me not being there. I guess he's a little bit of a mollycoddled fellow. That's probably my fault, but this will probably help him. But I'm definitely feeling he must have felt like I've abandoned him. So I feel a little bit bad about that. Um, yeah. Stephanie says, looks like you haven't missed a beat. Okay. Are you walking, taking the bus or taxi? So far, only walking. Everything in Manhattan's pretty close by if you can walk 1 or 2 miles. Okay, are you guys ready to get going? Good to see 26 of you in chat. Yeah, he will definitely do a couple of cartwheels, I think, when I get back. Although, who knows, he might be like, oh, you left me in the lurch. We'll see. How about that? I'll record him when I get back, because I did record him when I left, and he was sort of shivering, right? It's shivering because he knew he was about to be left behind. So, okay, are you guys ready to get busy with episode 49? Bear in mind, I haven't given it a title, so let's keep our eyes open for a title, and let's try and get through July. Okay. Right, so it's 15th of July, 1888. My dear Theo, it feels quite weird to be doing this somewhere else, right? You will have received my letter of this morning in which I enclose 50 franc note for Bing. And there's still more I want to write to you about this Bing business. The point is that we do not know enough about Japanese prints. Fortunately, we know more about the Japanese of France, the Impressionists. So Japanese paper, Japanese art proper, already interred in collections, already impossible to find in Japan itself, is becoming of secondary interest. But that doesn't mean if I had a single day to see Paris again, I should not call at Bing's to see those very Hokusai and other drawings of the great period. Besides, Bing himself used to say to me when I was admiring the ordinary prints that after a while I should come to see that they are quite different things still. By the way, the very next letters, I promise you, is a lot more interesting than this one. There's artworks that we're going to look at. So just hold on. Let's try and just get through this. Loti's book, Mademoiselle Chrysantheme, taught me this much. The rooms there are bare, without decoration or ornaments. And that very thing wakened my interest in the excessively synthetic drawings of another period, which probably are to our prince what a sober Malay is to a Monticelli. You know well enough that I do not dislike Monticelli, no color, nor color prints either. Even when I'm told you must get out of the habit of that. Okay, let's go on to this paragraph. So now if you give a whole Sunday to it and choose 100 francs worth of stock, you can tell yourself beforehand that you will not sell them, having chosen them yourself. You can pay for them in installments. Is this all about um, Japanese prints? Looks like that. Okay, I'm not going to read about Japanese prints here. Okay, then that will give you a Claude Monet and other pictures, because if you take the trouble to ferret out the prints, you have a perfect right to use them as exchanges with painters for their pictures. I think Van Gogh kind of had a debt to settle regarding Japanese prints, and now they wanting him to pay for it. So that's what this letter is really all about. Today I sent 6 drawings after painted studies to Bernard. I promised him 6 more, and I've asked for some sketches after his painted studies in exchange. Um, he calls Paris a queer city where you can only live by spilling your guts, and where you can do nothing or even less as long as you are not half dead. I've just read Victor Hugo's L'Année Terrible. There's hope there, but that hope is in the stars. I think it is true. It's quite interesting, those words, eh? Hope is in the stars. Given Starry Night, and given what he says in Starry Night. You know what I mean? Given not what he says, what he's going through. And so isn't he looking at the stars from the asylum with a hopeful kind of mindset? Do you agree with that? Hope is in the stars. I think it is true and well told and beautiful. Indeed, I should be glad to believe it myself, for there it is. So in other words, he's just basically saying, I would like to believe in hope, and believe that hope is in the stars. Welcome, Lorraine. Welcome. But let's forget that this Earth is a planet too, and consequently a star or celestial orb. And all of that is dealing with this idea of Starry Night, of kind of what he is thinking when he's painting that, right? Terry says there's a good title. What, Hope is in the Stars? Okay, Terry, I'm gonna take your word for it. Shall I quickly change it? So while I'm doing that, let me just change the screen size here. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I've gone to Bryant Park in the day, and I've gone to Bryant Park at night, and it's also quite amazing when you see the tall edifices, going up, and then the um, skeletal branches of the trees sort of blackening, making kind of blackened silhouettes. And then I'm trying to think if I saw stars above them. The night sky is pretty bright. I did see the moon very clearly. I can't quite remember seeing stars. I'll look out for that the next time I'm there. I might actually go there after this. It's always very, very interesting walking around Manhattan, that's for sure. By the way, when I was in Best Buy, a guy totally lost his shit. uh, the salesman somehow upset him, and this guy screamed, uh, said, called the Best Buy salesman a jerk off, and then the guy helping me says this happens all the time, and then his colleague said no, it doesn't, and he said yes, but at the branch down the road. So that was definitely an interesting moment. Definitely interesting. I kind of made a joke. I said I should actually record this, put it on YouTube. The guy actually got taken out, not taken out, taken outside with by security. It was quite interesting. Okay, shall we continue? Well done, Terry. You win the award for looking out for a good um, title there. Cheryl, thanks a lot for that. Thank you. Okay, so let's continue. So he says, I think it's true and well told and beautiful. And indeed, I should be glad to believe it myself. But don't let's forget that this planet, this Earth, is a planet too, and consequently a star or celestial orb. And if all the other stars were the same, that would not be much fun, nothing for it but to begin all over again. But in art, for which one needs time, it would not be bad to live more than one life. That's also quite an incredible thing that he's saying there, because he's really running out of life. He's got 2 years left, and the end of his life is going to be so tragic. I mean, he you can say he's got 2 years left, but about 1 year is almost in a prison, and several months are going to be bitterly unhappy where he loses his ear. Um, what was that? I kind of missed it. Good thing to see the new building on 42nd Street and Vanderbilt Avenue. I think I have seen it. Does it sort of look like an hourglass? I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but I have walked. I have gone by 42nd Street. Does it sort of have an hourglass design? Anyway, let's go back to this. Do you see how poignant it is? He's talking about hope and hope in the stars, and he's seeing the Earth as part of the symphony of the cosmos, and within that context, he's contemplating the sort of synchronicity of life. How is there resurrection after death? Is there um, reincarnation to some extent? Is there going to be life on some other star? Where he says there's nothing for it but to begin all over again. Anyway, he says in art, for which one needs time, it would not be bad to live more than one life. It is rather attractive to think of the Greeks and the old Dutch masters and the Japanese continuing their glorious school on other orbs. So can you see he's thinking in an extremely cerebral way. It's one of the most cerebral comments I think I've ever read from him. Where I would put it totally differently. I mean, with the benefit of a century's science at my side, but I think you can lead multiple lives in this life. You can be born, you can learn, you can do something, you can fail, and then you start down a different direction, kind of down a new path, and then you can have another life and another journey, and so on and so on and so on. I don't think you necessarily need to die in order to live as in have a mortal death. I mean, I've led several lives in my one life. I've been like almost a career triathlete. I've been an author for many years. I guess it still feels weird to say. I guess I'm a YouTuber now. But I mean, you can really easily reinvent yourself. And I actually think because the pace of everything, the pace of life is so fast now, you kind of need to reinvent yourself. Maybe not in an extreme way, but certainly in a You need to update your software, right? So anyway, that's kind of what he was referring to. Let's go back to the letter. It says enough for today. Then he says, if our sisters could again bring us some wood engravings and things like that, then that wouldn't be a bad idea. Okay, so let's go on to the next letter. I think there's some very nice sketches in this letter. Yes. Fishing boats at sea. Oh, it's not allowing me to show that because it's only activated this tab. Um, Not sure how to deal with that. Let's have a look. I'm not going to mess with StreamYard right now, but unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you this because it basically opens another tab, and that now it's set to tab. Let's see if I can sort it out. Just bear with me. Uh, I think I've just screwed things up now. Um, I'm going to have to do it here. Yeah, I think I've screwed it up. How do I bring it back? Like that. Okay. Anyway, so I'm not gonna at this point. I'm not gonna do the um. It's set to a tab, but not the screen thing because I've only got really one screen to work with. So yeah, sorry about that. You're just gonna have to. I suppose like what I could do is just blow it up like this. Not quite the same, but you can see fishing boats at sea over there, and that is streets in Saint Marie. That's the seaside holiday spot, and canal with women washing. I think we've seen that before as well. And there's sower, we've seen that as well. And then haystacks and farm, we've also seen that one. Wheat field, I'm not sure if we've seen that one. I'm going to have a look at it privately. Yeah, we've not seen that one. Okay, and then wheat field with owls in the background. Have we seen that one? Not quite sure if we have. The background looks familiar, but the foreground, not quite. Sheaves of wheat. That's a new one, isn't it? I quite like that. And then rocks and trees. Anyway, that's kind of the best I can do. I do have another monitor here, but I'm not really taking it out at this point. So hopefully the next live I do might be better than this one. We'll see. Okay, let's deal with this letter to Emile Bernard, 17th of July. It's not a very long one. Um, my dear friend Bernard, I've just sent you another 9 sketches after painted studies. So you'll see subjects from the scenery that inspires old man Cezanne, because the crown near A is almost the same as the countryside around Torreson or the crow here. The Camargue is even plainer, for often there is nothing other than poor soil and tamarisk bushes and the coarse grass that is to these bare pastures what esparto grass is to the desert. Knowing how keen you are on Cezanne, I thought you might like these sketches of Provence. Not that a drawing of mine and one by Cezanne have much in common. No, indeed, no, indeed, any more than Monticelli and I, but I too love the countryside they have loved so much, and for the same reasons, the color and the logical composition. So one thing about New York, you may know that I studied the history of architecture. I studied for 3 years to be a builder. I studied quantity surveying, and my father's a builder, and I actually thought I was going to take over his business. So, and I've obviously walked to the construction sites that my dad has built, and I've read Atlas Shrugged and so on. But I'm not really a city slicker at heart. I'm not really a yeah. I think I've got some modern taste, but I actually think I'm more into nature and natural spaces. And I think that whole fascination with Bryant Park it's actually strange. You fly halfway around the world to this huge city only to want to find the natural spaces within it. I mean, one of the first things I want to do tomorrow is go to Central Park. It's like, let's go to the world's biggest city and then go to the park in that city. Quite interesting, right? But of course, cities also have things that are very, I mean, it's hard not to walk through New York and not feel a sense of human accomplishment here, and that is worth something. Museums, libraries, incredible architecture, incredible monuments to human effort and human enterprise, and it is kind of invigorating and is quite exciting. Cheryl says you will love the park and it will refresh you. And then there's also the intimidating aspect of cities. I must have felt safer here than I've felt in even smallish South African cities, where you wouldn't easily just take out your phone and take photos. Um, so yeah, you also don't see beggars walking around. Not at all, but far less here than what I'm used to. How was your flight? I really had great company. I really had great conversations. Anyway, let's go back to the letter. Let's do it like this. I'll talk to you guys a little bit more towards the end. I just want to get through July. Okay, so he says, my friend Bernard, by collaboration, I did not mean to say that I think two or more pictures would have to work on this. Two more painters would have to work on the same pictures. What I was driving at was paintings that differ from one another yet go together and complement one another. Just like the Italian primitives or the German primitives or the Dutch school or the real Italians, in short, take the whole of the art painting. It's quite strange. We haven't really seen him refer to Gauguin in the last couple of letters. Or maybe I'm speaking too soon. Maybe he will soon. Whether they want it or not, their work forms a group, a series. That's quite interesting. I learned that as a writer, that it's easier to write and sell books when you make a series, when it's not like one standalone independent fragment, but it's something that's part of a series, that is kind of what people um, people like. Uh, Amazon also says when you publish a book on Amazon, they sort of say they give you some kind of message saying exactly that readers like books that are part of a series, and they encourage you to do that. Um, and I think that speaks to our need for continuity. I certainly am feeling a need for continuity here in New York. I'm sort of feeling I wish I could just use the cell phone that I've been using in the same way that I was using it back home. Um, and I don't know why um, digital devices don't just automatically sync to things like time zones. Some of them do, but some of them don't. And it's an area that technology can definitely um, has a little bit of work to do. But I mean, the fact remains when you go from one country to another country, there are differences. Not like the world is totally continuous. There are borders. There are borders that you need to take um, notice of. There are cultural differences, and there are cultural differences that you've got to take notice of. Um, and maybe some of those hiccups that you get when you're traveling are important. An important way of pausing you to say, "Hey, you're in a different place now. Wake up," kind of thing. What you said about Deborah D being blocked? Wow, Deborah says, I watched Loving Vincent again yesterday. It's so addictive and sad. Yeah, like I said previously, you couldn't do Loving Vincent with Cezanne. It's just his art just isn't like that. Deborah, did you notice that it plays like a detective story that's got a true crime feel to it, which I found totally surprising, totally unexpected. Yeah, people do like sets of things. Terry says I dropped yellow squash on my phone. Well, I hope you unblocked her. Okay. Okay, let me continue. So, I mean, Van Gogh took his own advice and he's painted series of things. So that's another thing that I, I think you might agree with me that before Paris, he didn't really paint like sets of things. Whereas after Paris, he's painting a series of trees in blossom. Then he's going to paint a series of like wheat fields. Then he's going to paint a series of cypresses, right? So, in other words, he did learn something from his time in Paris that's kind of what audiences like. And I've learned that with photography as well. You can take you don't just take one photo, you can take 20 photos of Bryant Park and out of them choose six that sit well with one another, you know. That's a really good comment. That's a really good comment from Mondo. Very true. Okay, let's continue. Thanks for that comment. Well, now at present, the Impressionists are also form a group, despite all their disastrous civil wars, in which both sides have been trying to get at each other's throats with a dedication they would have done better to reserve for other ends. In our northern school, you have Rembrandt, who heads that school because his influence may be seen in anyone who comes to know him more closely. Thus, we find Paulus Potter painting rutting and excited animals in equally exciting landscapes, in a thunderstorm, in the sunshine, in the melancholy of autumn. while that self-same Paulus Potter, before he came to know Rembrandt, was rather dry and over fussy. By the way, there was a huge lightning storm that was doing its thing, blitzing over Manhattan on Saturday night before I arrived. Quite interesting. It was actually on the news. Here are two people, Rembrandt and Potter, who belong together like brothers. And even though Rembrandt probably never touched a picture by Potter with his brush, that doesn't alter the fact that Potter and Raystal owe him all that is best in them. The thing that moves us so deeply when we have learned how to look at a corner of old Holland as if through their temperament. Okay, we're coming to the end of this letter. Moreover, the material problems of the painter's life make it desirable that painters should collaborate and unite, much as they did in the days of the guilds of St. Luke. But only they would ensure their material well-being and love one another like friends instead of making one another's life hell. Painters would be happier and in any case less ridiculous, less foolish and less culpable. However, I shan't labor the point because I realize that life carries us along so fast that we haven't the time to talk and to work as well. Ain't that the truth? That is the reason why, with unity still a long way off, we are still sailing the trackless deep in our frail little boats, all alone on the high seas of our time. Also quite poetic that. He says, we are now sailing the trackless deep in our frail little boats, all alone on the high seas of our time. I think that's true of us in terms of our individual lives, and I think that's true of us individually, but also collectively in our time. Is it a renaissance? Is it a decline? We cannot judge because we are too close to it not to be deceived by distorted perspectives. Contemporary events, our setbacks and successes, probably assume exaggerated proportions in our eyes. A hearty handshake from me, and I hope to hear something from you soon. Ever yours, Vincent. Okay, let's go on to the next letter, 19th of July. Some interesting paintings here as well. Flowering garden with path. Okay, just want to see how many letters are left in July. 22nd, 23rd. Actually, don't know if I'm going to get through all of them. I think I'm going to aim for this one of the letter from Paul Gauguin. That'll be the last letter. Okay. We've done that one. Okay, you guys ready? Shall I deal with a quick couple of comments? He does write eloquently. Yeah, it's true. Do you know why he's such a good writer? Is because he's such a good reader. I remember when when I was at school in high school, I was a really good essay writer, and sometimes there were kids at school who wanted to get A averages, but their weakness was like if they were trying to get an A in English, then they knew that their essays were going to bring them down. So then they'd come to me and they'd ask me, "How do you write a good essay?" And I said, "Read more, improve your vocabulary." And I said, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, "I read a shitload, and reading helps. Reading a lot helps you write, helps your writing. Reading helps writing." So it was like, how do you write better? And I was just like, well, read more. And you can see that Van Gogh is a bookworm. In fact, he even worked in a bookshop. But I mean, beyond that, he's got quite a good mind as well. Josie, well, thanks for joining us. Well, there's almost 40 people in chat. Good to see you guys. Yvonne says, I just love it when Vincent gets philosophical in his letters. Okay, so let's keep going. I think I need to do that. Okay. My dear Theo, this is 19 July 1888. Many thanks for your letter, which gave me great pleasure, arriving just exactly at the moment when I was still dazed with the sun and the strain of wrestling with a rather big canvas. So that is a lovely little glimpse into exactly what he's feeling like in a moment, right? Is that every day comes out of the sun and it's almost like he's got sunstroke, and he's also got to battle with the wind, right? When he talks about the strain of wrestling with a big canvas, he's literally talking about the wind. So can you see that the Mistral isn't just like, you know what, there's a bit of wind in all, it's a cute little characteristic. No, it's a daily reality. And for Vincent, it's actually a daily kind of struggle. It's part of the struggle of working there. He's literally wrestling with his canvas while he's trying to paint outdoors, right? I have a new drawing of a garden full of flowers and two painted studies as well. Now, do you notice how none of these paintings even hold a candle to the one that he did all that time ago of that sort of yellow field? None of these really come close to that. Then he says, I must send you a new order for paint and canvas, rather a heavy one, only it is not at all urgent. What really might be urgent is the canvas, because I have a batch of stretches that I've taken the studies out of, and I ought to be putting new canvas on them between times. You will see from this sketch the subject of the new studies. There's one vertical and another horizontal of the same subject, size 30 canvas. That really is the subject for a picture in it. There really is a subject for a picture in it. And I truly can't tell if I shall ever paint pictures that are peaceful and quietly worked out, which seems to me it will always be headlong. I think he means I'm always going to rush and be emotional, kind of thing. And then at last, a reference to Gauguin. Have you heard any news from him? I wrote him myself last week to ask how his health was and how the work was going. No reply from Russell, who cannot be in Paris according to what McKnight says. He has returned with Bach. Still a frosty silence about my work when they come. It is true enough what you say about Prinsenach, that it's the same story all over again. But when at long last the good soul isn't there anymore, it will be one more gap and desolation for our small circle. And indeed, we shall feel it ourselves, for there is something poignant in having been influenced by him. And then to see someone whom you have always seen on the go reduced to such a condition of suspicious helplessness and continual suffering, it certainly doesn't give one a pleasant or cheery idea of human existence or heighten one's zest for life. Our mother in Breda must be getting very old too, involuntarily. Is it the effect of this race-dull country? I keep thinking of Holland and across the twofold remoteness of distance and time gone by these memories. They have a kind of heartbreak in them. What you write about Reed isn't very cheering either. At times he would talk so much about turning painter and going off to an aunt in the country that it is just possible he may be in the act of carrying this plan out. What does Maria say? Perhaps she has disappeared too. All the same, I think that the continual wind here must have something to do with the haggard look the painted studies have, because you see it in Cezanne too. So can you see that? I find that really incredible. He's actually acknowledging that the wind, an outside force, an outside agent doing this while he's painting is actually creating a kind of blurriness, a kind of agitated aspect to the painting that's not entirely the painter's um, work, right? And so that is influencing their style almost by force, and then maybe they adopt that as well. Isn't that fascinating? Deborah says the Mistral is an annual gale. Yeah, can be. I'm quite surprised that it's not so noisy where I am. Maybe it's because I'm several several floors up, couple dozen floors up vertically. That the sound from the streets doesn't really reach me. But I was really quite surprised that it's. I mean, I'm in Hell's Kitchen. I'm surprised it's not that noisy. Yeah, it definitely is interesting. Gloria, I can't believe you this late. It's big. I'm very offended, Gloria. Okay, let's continue. Okay, what must make it easy for the Japanese to cram their works of art into drawers and cupboards is that the kakamonos can be rolled up, but our paintings cannot, for they would end up by scaling off. Nothing could help us to sell our canvases more than if they could gain general acceptance as decorations for middle class houses, the way it used to be in Holland. By the way, I saw an article. I wish I could show it to you now, but there's an article. I think it's on Leonardo da Vinci, and I think indirectly on the Mona Lisa, where they were talking about a secret ingredient that artists used, and then that secret ingredient was egg yolk. So I think the egg yolk was supposed to give the art a certain kind of veneer, and that was the secret ingredient. Anyway, um, down here in the south, it would do one's heart good to see pictures on the white walls, but go and look everywhere, great colored Julian medallions, horrors, and alas, we can do nothing to change the state of affairs. However, there are the cafes. Perhaps later on we'll get to decorate them. Goodbye now, with a handshake, ever yours, Vincent. I'm relieved that some of these letters aren't too long. How many letters have I got left to read? One, two, three. Okay, I can handle that. Also know I know that some of you are approaching your bedtimes as well. It's 10 to 11 here in Manhattan. I know it must be the same time in Connecticut, right? Okay, my dear Theo, if I were younger, I'm sure I'd want to suggest to old Bossard that he send you and me to London without any other salary than the 200 francs a month credit. But you get, but you to get half the profit on the impressionist pictures which they could deduct from the salary of 200 francs. But our carcasses are no longer young, and to undertake a journey to London in order to scrape together some money for the impressionists would be a job for Boulanga or Don Quixote. It's quite interesting his turn of phrase. He refers to himself as a carcass. He's aware that he's not the healthiest or the youngest person anymore. And besides, our old Boussard would send us away with a flea in our ear if we suggested anything like that to him. Only I would rather see you going to London than to New York. Wow, there's even talking about New York. And guess where I went? I flew London to New York. Um, these painters' fingers are growing supple, even though the carcass is going to pieces, and the merchants head for selling. And a long job to learn it is getting more expensive experience too. I wonder if I should put my glasses on. We must not forget our advantages, and let's try to hang on to our patience to do the right thing and see clearly. I feel like that's a kind of a little bit of a message to me. Be patient. Isn't it true, for instance, that in any case, it is better if someday they say to you, go to London, than chuck you out, your service is no longer being required? I'm getting older than you, and my ambition is to be less of a burden to you. I think that's a really interesting statement, because although that's his ambition, you know, it's put me back slightly on screen. If you think about it, doesn't he end up becoming, from this point onwards, an increasingly huge burden on Theo? I mean, he's just renting a house more than it's like it's not just like the right size for Vincent. It's enough to for another artist to live there as well, right? So so he's a financial burden to his brother, and then he has Gauguin hang around at his brother's expense, who's like his partner in crime, in a sense. You know what I mean? Gauguin is an additional burden to Theo, but at the request of Vincent, right? And then he loses his ear, and then that creates a burden. Theo's got to come all the way down around Christmas time to sort of rescue Van Gogh and find out what's going on. Then he's in an asylum for months. And then when he comes out, he has that painting 70 pictures in 70 days. So, although he wants to not be a burden, do you think he succeeds? And if no actual obelisk of two pyramidical, a catastrophe occurs and there's no rain or frogs in the meantime, I hope to achieve it sometime. Again, that is so portentous because one catastrophe after another occurs. I mean, in a way, it couldn't be more catastrophic. The ear is a catastrophe. The asylum is in a way, a bigger catastrophe, and his death is the biggest catastrophe of all. And they're about to go into that whole period. I've just taken 30 painted studies from the stretches. If it's only our living we're after in business affairs, would it be such a hardship to go to London, where I think there's more chance of selling than elsewhere? Can you see how hard they're working just to try and sell art? You know, everywhere they go, they are trying to sell. And you know, it's like the advent of photography has been one big curse, right? In any case, I tell myself that out of the 30 studies I shall send you, you will not be able to sell one in Paris. Well, you're right about that. You're right. But then, as old Prince Harker would say, everything gets sold. And in our case, well, and that is also true, everything was eventually sold. Every Van Gogh today is priceless. Every Van Gogh in his day was worthless, except one. And in our case, what I do is not saleable like the Brochardts, for instance, but it can be sold to people who buy things because there is nature in them. Why a canvas I've covered? Why a canvas I've covered is worth more than a blank canvas. That's quite a statement to make, right? It's quite a statement to make. That, believe me, my pretensions go no further. That is my right to paint, for my reason for painting, and by the Lord, I have one. All it has cost me is a carcass pretty well destroyed and wits pretty well crazed. Again, do you think Van Gogh is struggling with mental illness at this point? Do you think Van Gogh is crazy? Because here he's saying, all that being a painter's cost me is basically my health and my mental health. But do you think at this point that he's crazy? Do you have any sense of mental illness right now? Good night, Mel. I'm sorry, I'm only seeing your Good night now. Sorry about that. Has Stephanie also gone to sleep? And so this, can you see how ridiculous it is that they say Van Gogh had mental illness when he writes the way that he does? I mean, you could almost excuse anyone for going a bit loopy. I don't mean literally going insane, just going getting unhinged if your job is to paint and you just can't sell anything. Anyone would find that a hard pill to swallow. Then he says, only to lead the same life I might lead if I were a philanthropist. All it has cost you is, say, 15,000 francs, which you have advanced to me. So there Van Gogh is giving an estimate of how much his career has so far cost Thea, 15,000 francs, quite a lot, right? And it probably ultimately cost him somewhere around 20,000 francs, 2025. Anyway, he says, well, then they've no reason to chuck us out. Here's the conclusion of the whole matter. When dealing with this Bouchard, keep cool and keep your head. And if they talk to you about London, don't put the thing just as crudely to them as I did at the beginning of this letter. But you do well not to resist the powers that be, such powers. My dear brother, if I were not broke and crazy with this blasted painting, what a deal I'd make just for the Impressionists. But there I am broke. London is good. London is just what we need. But alas, I feel I cannot do what I once could. But broken down and none too well myself, I do not see any misfortune in your going to London. If there's fog there, well, that seems to be increasing in Paris too. There's a kind of a reference to Monet indirectly, right? What's wrong basically is that we are getting older and must behave accordingly. That's all there is to it. Yet there's something for us as well as against, and we must make the best of it. I kind of feel that is advice to me. You're getting older and you must behave accordingly. That's all there is to it. Um, yeah. It seems queer that you have not had any news of Gauguin either. I suppose he's sick and discouraged. If I reminded you just now of what painting costs us, it is only to emphasize what we ought to tell ourselves, that we have gone too far to turn back. That's all I harp on. It's kind of saying, you've spent 15,000 francs on me, don't stop now. I mean, otherwise, all of that money has been wasted. It's kind of like that, the whole idea of a car. At what point you abandon a car that is going to break down? Well, you've got to decide, is it definitely going to break down? Can it be resurrected? Anyway, it says, well, but Gloria, you say you're not that old, but Van Gogh was 35 and he's speaking this way. I'm 51. So anyway, he goes on to say, if Gauguin cannot pay his debts nor his fare, if he can guarantee me a cheaper life in Brittany, why shouldn't I go to him if we want to help him? If he says I'm at the height of my powers and my talent, why shouldn't I say the same myself? But then we are not at the height of our finances, so we must do what comes cheapest. Lots of painting, few expenses, that is the line we must take. So once again, I tell you that I lay aside all preference, either for the north or the south. Whatever plans one makes, there's always a route of difficulty somewhere. It would all be plain sailing with Gauguin, but once you shift him, is he going to be content? Well, that is a huge question. He's saying, as I understand, he's saying, once you move him from A to B, is he going to be content? And what do you think the answer is? Terry says he's using sick and discouraged to describe someone else. Lorraine says it's smart that he kept a record of the spending. It's amazing that Theo kept every single one of Vincent's letters. That I find pretty amazing. Okay, let's continue. But since no plans can be made, I'm not worrying about the precariousness of our position. Knowing and feeling this will wake us up and make us get on with the job. If we do this and make a mess of it, which I myself doubt, we shall have something left. But I can see nothing in the future when one sees people like Gauguin up against a blank wall. Let us hope that there will be a way out for him and for us. So, in a way, he sees Gauguin's plight similar to his own. He sees Gauguin's the challenge Gauguin is facing is the same as the one he's facing. And so you can see how the um, the difficulty and the sort of stuckness that Gauguin is in actually makes Van Gogh a little bit depressed because it's like that this the struggle is real, right? Yeah, Theo is the co-hero with Vincent. That's right. Yeah, thanks to a wonderful sister-in-law, definitely. She also kept those letters and did something with them. Gwen says, I'm all the ages I've ever been. If I were to think of and dwell on disastrous possibilities, I could do nothing. I throw myself headlong into my work and come up again with my studies. If the storm within gets too loud, take a glass too. I take a glass too much to stun myself. We've heard that before, right? He says, um, that this is really an incredible paragraph. Let me read it again. If I were to think of and dwell on disastrous possibilities, I could do nothing. I throw myself headlong into my work and come up again with my studies. If the storm within gets too loud, I take a glass too much to stun myself. You kind of get the idea that the storm within does sometimes get too loud, and so he does drink occasionally. Well, he's going to be drinking more and more over the next period. He is rich in character. Kristen says, I love that he's just so matter of fact about his thoughts. Grey Cat, you're a rare treasure amongst us. Okay, let's continue. Cracked, of course, when you look at what one ought to be. But in the old days, I used to feel less of a painter. Now painting is becoming a distraction for me, like rabbit hunting for the cracked brain. They do it to distract themselves. My concentration becomes more intense, my hand more sure. That's a classic Van Gogh quote. I think you may have seen it somewhere before. That is why I almost dare to swear to you that my painting will improve because I have nothing left but that. Have you read de Concord's book that Jules Dupree gave them the impression that he was cracked too? I think cracked is a reference to like when you lose it, when you kind of lost your mind. Jules Dupree had found a collector fellow who was paying him. If only I could find that and not be such a burden on you. After the crisis which I went through when coming down here, I can make no plans or anything. I'm decidedly better now, but hope, the desire to succeed is gone. And I work because I must, so as not to suffer too much mentally, so as to distract my mind. He's talking about his mental state, and he's saying, you know what, the only way to stay sane is just to keep working because he's sort of realized that people just aren't buying his stuff. So can he really continue to hope? Yesterday, McKnight broke his silence a little by saying that he liked my last two studies, The Garden of Flowers, very much and talked about them for a very long time. Well, But do you realize that if you were on your own, you might perhaps have to look for English business relations? That is to say, once more, would it really be such a great hardship to go to London if it is inevitable? Is there any need to be miserable about it? After all, there is no comparison except for the climate. It is infinitely better than the Congo. A good handshake and many thanks for your letter and the 50 franc note. So I think we're going to conclude with a final letter. And it's from Vincent to, oh, hang on, there's one letter after this. From Vincent to Emile Bernard, 23rd July. My dear friend Bernard, many, many thanks for the drawings you sent me. I very much like the avenue of plane trees and the woman under the apple tree, the woman with the umbrella. Then the 4 drawings of nude woman, especially the one who's washing herself, a grey effect enhanced with black, white, yellow, brown. It's charming. Ah, Rembrandt, with all due admiration for Baudelaire, I venture to presume, especially going by those verses, that he knew virtually nothing about Rembrandt. A study of a male nude, realistic and simple. He stands leaning against a door or a pillar in a dark interior, a shaft of light from above glancing across his bent head and thick red hair. A Degas, you would say, because the animality of the body is real and intensely felt. But listen, have you ever taken a good look at the ox or the interior of a butcher's shop in the Louvre? You haven't you haven't taken a really good look at them, have you? And Baudelaire infinitely less so. It would be a real treat for me to spend a morning with you in the Dutch gallery. All those things are almost impossible to describe, but standing in front of the paintings, I should be able to paint out the miracles and mysteries, which are the reason why the primitives do not necessarily take first place in my admiration. Tanny says he's also so strained, isolated, coming up with solutions with no buy-in from others. Okay, but then I am scarcely an eccentric, a Greek statue, a peasant by Malay, a Dutch portrait, a female nude by Courbet or Degas. These calms and perfectly modeled representations are the very reason why very many other things, the primitives, no less than the Japanese, give me the impression of having been composed with a pen. I find that immensely interesting, but anything complete and perfect renders um, infinitely tangible, and the enjoyment of any beautiful thing, like coitus, a moment of infinity. Do you, for instance, know a painter called Vermeer, who among other things, painted a very beautiful and pregnant Dutch lady? Well, I must say, I think I prefer Vermeer's art in general to Van Gogh's. I know that sounds like, um, blasphemy, but it's true. I actually saw Vermeer when I was in the Netherlands. The palette of this remarkable painter is blue, lemon yellow, pearl grey, black, white. Of course, all the riches of a full palette are there too. In his rarely encountered pictures, but the combination of lemon yellow, pale blue, and pearl grey is a characteristic of him. Black, white, grey, and pink are of Velasquez. Anyway, I know perfectly well that Rembrandt and the Dutch painters are scattered widely over museums and collections, and it isn't very easy to get an overall idea of them if you only know of the Louvre. Yet it is the French, Charles Blanc, Thoret, Fromentin, and several others, who have written about their art better than the Dutch have. Those Dutch painters had hardly any imagination or fantasy, but an enormous amount of taste and a feeling for composition. They did no paintings of Christ, our Lord, etc. Rembrandt did, of course, but he was the only one, and biblical subjects are relatively rare in his work. He was the only one who exceptionally painted figures of Christ, etc. And with him, they look quite unlike anything done by other religious painters. It is all metaphysical magic. That is how Rembrandt painted angels. He does a self-portrait, old, toothless, wrinkled, wearing a cotton cap, a picture from life in a mirror. He's dreaming, dreaming, and his brush takes up his self-portrait again, but this time from memory, and the expression on the face becomes sadder and more saddening. He dreams, dreams on, and why or how I cannot tell, but as Socrates and Mohammed had their guardian spirits, so Rembrandt paints a supernatural angel with a Da Vinci smile behind that old man who resembles himself. So you kind of do get a sense that dreams are featuring more and more in the life of the artist who is struggling with reality. Reality is so hard that you kind of get the sense that he has to dream in order to deal with it. He has to have kind of hopes of wheeling stars in order to deal with hard, harsh reality, right? I'm showing you a painter who dreams and paints from the imagination, and I started by contending that it is characteristic of the Dutch that they do not invent anything, that they have neither imagination nor fantasy. Am I being illogical? No. Rembrandt did not invent anything, and that angel and that strange Christ came about because he knew them, felt that they were there. Delacroix paints a Christ using the unexpected note of bright lemon yellow in such a way that the colorful and radiant note in the picture assumes the inexpressible strangeness and charm of a star in the corner of the firmament. I must say that's really interesting. I don't know if you remember the picture of Delacroix, the boat on a storm, and everything's very dark, and then even the sky is kind of purple, and then around Christ's head is like a um, yellow energy light. It's like a small star around, almost like a corona around his head. Small in terms of the picture, it's like 1% of the actual space of the picture, and you kind of get the sense that that idea, that magic, that just in that tiny little piece of that painting, Van Gogh appropriated that idea and he put that into Starry Night in a sense. Well, now there's a world of difference between the method used by Delacroix and Rembrandt and that of all the other religious painters. I'll write again soon. This is to thank you for the drawings, which have given me enormous pleasure. I've just finished a portrait of a girl of 12, brown eyes, black hair, and black eyebrows, yellowish gray flesh, white background, strongly tinged with Veronese green, a blood red bodice with violet stripes, blue skin with large orange polka dots, an oleander flower in the little sweet little hand. It has exhausted me so much that I am hardly in a fit state to write. Goodbye for now, and once more, many thanks. Can you see how he's turning himself inside out? He's emptying himself to try to paint properly, to try and do what he's supposed to do. And so that's the picture. La Museum. Do you want me to blow it up a bit more? That's that picture. Okay, now on to the next letter, last letter. Okay, from Paul Gauguin to Vincent van Gogh, Pontavin, 25th July. My dear Vincent, and you can see it's a short letter. I've just read your interesting letter and I quite agree with you on how little importance exactness is in art. In other words, he's talking about the passing, is saying that realism isn't necessary because photography, that's now the advent of photography. And so he goes on to say, art is an abstraction. Unfortunately, one becomes more and more misunderstood. I would really like that we reach our goal, that is to say, my journey to Provence. I always had the fancy to interpret the bullfights in my own way. So that's what's attracting him to that area. As I understand them, I'm starting to get the freedom of my faculties. My illness had weakened me, and in my last studies, I think that what I've done up to now is out of date. Naturally, this band of pigs here find me quite mad, and that I that rather pleases I that rather pleases me because it proves to me that I'm not. I've just finished a Breton fight that you will like. That you will like, I'm sure. All of this bodes very ill for Vincent. He's talking. He refers to the people around him as a band of pigs. They find him quite mad. Now, it's quite an irony that Van Gogh is described as quite mad, and that's exactly how Gauguin will describe Vincent as he will say, I found him quite mad. But who is actually the who is really the trouble, the hellraiser in the story? Anyway, it goes on to say, two kids, blue pants and vermilion pants. One at the top to the right is coming out the water. Green lawn, pure emerald, going down to chromium yellow without execution, as in Japanese crepons. I must say, this reminds me a lot of photographers who they just tell you, I use this aperture, and I use that, um, uh, you know, what's the other thing? Shutter speed, and you know what I mean? They always just talk within those technicalities. Then it says at the top, boiling cascade of water, pink, white, and a rainbow on the side close to the frame. Then he says, I really don't understand why a rich man wouldn't buy what he admires. Let's still hope. Who is this Thomas you mentioned? Is he Thomas de Bojana, or is he the dealer who lives close to Plus Vendôme? My friend Laval came back from Martinique. He brought back some very curious watercolors. I want to make you see that what you love is art. I talk as if we were already together. I must tell you that once I make a resolution, I'm always in a hurry to put it to execution. Well, that is not true, because he would say, I'm coming to all, and then he would just not come. So if it weren't for this filthy money, my trunks would soon be packed. I don't know why, but for about 10 days, I painted a lot of madness in my head that I intend to execute in the midi, which is where he is. I believe that is because of my state of health, which is flourishing again. I have a need of struggle to carve with a club. After all the research that I've just done here, I believe it will help me to go better than before. Until we are together, an affectionate handshake, Paul Gauguin. I must say, these words really stand out to me, where he says, I want to carve with a club. And isn't that what he did to Vincent? Isn't that what he did with a sword to Vincent's ear? Because not only was Gauguin a pugilist, he was also a fencer. And he did take swords with him to the Yellow House. And when he abandoned Vincent, that's what he left behind, his swords. And they were apparently worth quite a lot. So that's where we're going to leave it. We'll pick up the narrative on the 25th of July, maybe even tomorrow. So we'll see. Okay. I'm going to just deal with a couple of your questions and comments, and then I'm going to call it a day. Um, Josie says Gauguin was violent. Susan says yes. Kristen says he was a psycho. Okay. Let's have a look at some other comments. Deborah says Vincent tried so hard to show that he was in his heart through his art. Or his heart was in his art, right? Gloria says, are you enjoying New York City? Um, yeah. I'm going to have a quick bite to eat if you don't mind. Mm. Yeah, I had a fantastic lunch at a Korean restaurant today. I love Korean food. Fantastic lunch, good value, really enjoyable. I didn't really have a very good afternoon because I made the mistake of going to an electronics store, and they easily spent 2 hours trying to do some stuff. I don't really want to talk about it right now, but I would have gone on to Central Park and the Met if I didn't waste 2 hours in Best Buy. And so that was definitely not my best use of time and day so far. Um, but yeah, I'm not going to really. I don't really want to talk about it because it's just not fun. But it was very important that I sort something out. And anyway, I did at least manage to get some sleep when I got back to my hotel. So at least I'm starting to get get rested and all that kind of thing. Sorry to hear about your mom, Mel. Sorry, not your mom, your friend. Sorry to hear about your friend. I am planning on going to Central Park tomorrow. I'm just sorry I didn't go today because the weather was so awesome. Tomorrow's supposed to be warmer but grayer. I'm in Manhattan. I do have a lot to do. Yeah. Kristen, I'm going to be in Denver a lot sooner than you possibly can imagine. I hope you guys don't mind me eating on a live. I hope you don't mind. I'll try and eat with my mouth closed. I'm going to make a note of the Oculus near Wall Street. Check. I'll try and check that out. Terry, when you've flown halfway around the world, taken buses and trains and whatnot between airports, I think you kind of want to not be in any kind of vehicle for a while, you know? Thanks, Yvonne. Yeah, Times Square is it's like a ant's nest. Did you have to lug all your equipment there? You mean to Best Buy? No, no, I didn't. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I'm not a city person, although I must say I'm kind of loving Manhattan. I just sort of um, I'm just how can I put it? I've kind of made a couple of errors already. Like, how can I put it? I ordered dinner that cost like $100 on my very first night here, and and then I managed to order dinner that was only $20. I almost bought a cable for my computer for $160. That was the price. But so I just feel like there's a little bit of a, you've got to be careful you don't make bad mistakes, um, because you somewhere that you don't know very well. I've not yet taken the I've not yet taken the plunge of eating from one of the street stalls. Um, yeah, I haven't done that yet. Am I jet lagged? Sorry. Am I jet lagged? I'm not sure. My sleep has been so chaotic. When I was in South Africa, I would often work till very late at night, and then there'd be construction right next door to me the whole day. So my sleep has definitely been very distorted and messed up. So I'm hoping to get into a proper pattern here. We'll see if that happens. What did Gloria say? Have I ridden the subway? No, not yet. Oh, is New York expensive? Yeah, takeaway food is cheap and good. This is kind of a takeaway. So far, yeah, I'm probably going to go back to that Korean restaurant because that was really awesome. Deborah, I'm going to be putting more photos on Patreon. I'll probably do that after this live. At some point, I'll show you guys the view from my hotel room. Maybe on the day that I leave, I'll show you guys a little bit more. Okay, see, we just passed an hour and a half. Let's deal with the last couple of comments. Now, there's definitely a lot more police around. I was literally I was literally going to be passing Trump Tower at the time that he arrived there, but because of the problem at Best Buy, I decided to come back to my hotel and try and sort out the problem. And so, yeah, I was right there. And anyway, I ended up watching Trump arrive on the news, MSNBC. I've got a TV up there. And so I was literally about a mile away when Trump arrived. Um, but yeah, there's definitely quite a heightened police presence in New York right now. Feels like it. Living in the Pine says, how long are you traveling in the US? Um, I'm not sure. At this point, it's for a couple of weeks. Depends on how these couple of weeks go. It depends on what happens here while I'm here, and it depends on what happens at home while I'm here. Um, so it's sort of I'm sort of fluid. Um, yeah, I guess I'm sort of fluid. When I'm a little bit more settled in one place, and I can do lives like this in a way that I want to do them, because I need to also work while I'm here. If I feel like that's up and running and it's working, then I'll be more comfortable staying longer. If I don't, then I'll return home sooner. So in other words, if I can't work while I'm here, as in do lives, then I'll definitely go back sooner. Yeah, I believe he's there for an arraignment, which I think will just be a couple of minutes. So I am aware of that. Yeah, it was a very good. That was a very good role. Just around the corner from me. Yvonne says you'd love upstate New York. I would actually like to go and see Connecticut as well. Lisa's from there. Stephanie's also from there. Did I catch the opening statements from Stork? I did. I found the camera coverage terrible. Like compared to the Murdoch case, you had at least three really good camera angles. Whereas the Stork case, you couldn't even see her. I thought the opening arguments I did hear were, I thought, terrible. Definitely much cheaper lawyers than Murdoch's lawyers, or not as good as Creighton Waters. So I just found it like not worth my time, to be honest. I don't know what you guys thought. What did you think, Terry? Yeah, it was terrible. Okay, I might go for a little bit of a walk outside. I'm not that tired now. I did sleep a little bit earlier this evening. I might go for a little bit of a walk. And maybe I'll see you guys this time tomorrow for episode 50. Maybe. I hope so. Well, if the camera angles improve, I might start paying a bit more attention to it. But at this rate, I'm not going to be doing that. Okay, I will do. Tanya, the thing is, how can I put it? Um, let me put it this way. If I come to America and I have 3 weeks of holiday, then great, I had a nice holiday, and then you go back home. But if I can combine, not in a horrible way, but if you can combine a productive day where you do what you want, and then you can also go up with a little bit of content, then you've got a lot more time to do what you want to do. So it can be 3 weeks of holiday, or three months that you combine work and play. So that's what's quite important, that you can combine work and play. You see what I'm saying? At the moment, I'm not very happy with um, what. for example, this live is not how I'd like to be working. I feel very limited and constrained, and I'm happy to not work. But as I said, then I will just return home after about 2, 3 weeks. So I'm going to try and improve on this, and then if I don't, then I'll just sort of cut my losses and you know do whatever. I do want to be at least until the weather warms up a little bit. It's quite a shock coming here from late summer South Africa to late winter. It's definitely because it's so cold. It's a bit of a shock to be cold suddenly. You know what I'm saying? The noise is not a problem. It's where I'm staying is so high in the sky that the noise doesn't actually reach. Well, is Core TV the only one covering the trial? Okay. If you travel to Florida, let us know. I don't think I'm going to be in Florida. I do think I'll be in Florida November next year for the moon launch. It's kind of like that, yeah. Kind of like that. Thanks a lot, Lorraine. Okay. Gwen, are you driving around? Not for the. I did bring my international driver's license, so I would actually love to drive, but I don't plan on driving for the first week or two. The West Coast is waiting. Yeah, no, so I'm kind of it's just really frustrating that I worked so hard to get my channel where it was, get that momentum, and I would have just liked to have come in and just been able to not be working constantly, but just be able to cover certain things the way that I want to, and that's already been severely, um, you know. And I suppose you've got to just roll with the punches. Another way of looking at it is just leave it and go out and have fun. I can definitely do that. I'm going to go out now. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining me. I will maybe see you guys tomorrow around about this time. We'll see. Uh, I'll let you guys know a little bit in advance. So more in advance than I did tonight. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. And yeah, keep your eyes peeled. Watch the space. Some interesting things going to be coming up. Okay, night night. Take care, guys. Sleep well. See you guys next time. Ciao.